Does this sound familiar? You complain about being burned out, but as soon as someone suggests that you take time off or set boundaries, you immediately explain why that's impossible. Let me tell you what's really going on here. You're not simply experiencing burnout, you're performing it. And I'm going to give you some signs to look for, as well as some actions that you can take to prevent it from taking over. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalysts, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss how a thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. I appreciate you joining me today. What we're going to be talking about is burnout. And I specifically did an episode, number 18, on overwork uh, not too long ago. And there is a slight difference between the two. And so we want to make a distinction, excuse me, between burnout and overwork. And the reason why I wanted to get into it is because I want to get a little bit beneath the surface of burnout and what we're going to call today performative burnout. And this is sometimes the burnout that we create ourselves. Not that we're not actually experiencing it, but this is what I mean when I say performative burnout. Uh, you're sharing and expressing with people that you're tired. You're not connecting with yourself. You're just not feeling like yourself, and all you do is work. You don't have time to get anything else done in your personal life. You don't have the resources that you need at work. But as soon as people give you advice, you just kind of dismiss it and it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. And so you just continue to go forward without making any changes or adjustments. And you've kind of made it very difficult to really get the kind of accommodation that you're seeking because you're not willing to make any changes. And so when you keep down a path like that, what you're doing is you're ignoring the warning signs of burnout. And again, this is not to say that you're not experiencing it, but you're continuing to perform it because you refuse to do anything about it when you're having conversations about how burned out you are. And so, my point with this is don't be a martyr. It's not that serious. There are real and tangible cost to being burned out: mental, emotional, physical. Your entire well being might be at risk if you choose to not make the appropriate adjustments uh, at work because of whatever it is that is driving you. And if you can relate to this, give me a like, a subscribe, and a follow, and be sure to leave a review for what you think about the podcast. And so let's get into how do we end up with burnout? How do we get to the burnout point? And I think that there are several contributors to that. Number one being leadership, because leadership helps to set the tone of the environments where we work. If you work for a leader who is modeling burnout behavior, you may take on that type of burnout behavior. And you do it because, again, you're trying to do a good job. Maybe you're trying to please your boss. Maybe you're trying to show your boss that you are completely competent and capable and that you can handle the workload. And maybe some of you have a boss who the example that they're setting is the one that they think that they use to get them to the place in their career where they are now. And I've seen this happen many times, as I'm sure you have as well, where a boss will tell you, well, this is what I did to get here. This is how I made it. Okay, well, maybe that was a different time, but that might not be acceptable nor sustainable in the environment where you work, or just even for your own personal goals and ambitions. Maybe that is just not the avenue for you to take. And so leaders, like I said, they play a pivotal role in setting the tone, which leads me to my second one, which is the overall culture. Because maybe it's not just within your particular department. Maybe this is culture wide because there are, of course, in larger organizations, you have subcultures around the company. Some departments seem to or appear to have a different work ethic than other departments. And this is problematic as well because if you're working in an organization where it seems that the overall culture of that company is these unrealistic work hours, unsustainable, well, then it's definitely going to be problematic because people will just ultimately say, well, that's just the way that it is. And so there is no reason that people have to try to change it or to complain about it and voice their concerns, or to their boss rather, because this is just kind of how it's always been. And you either deal with it, or you find somewhere else to work, which again we'll talk about, some of the solutions and the steps that we can take down the road. But the mission and vision and values of an organization are supposed to be there to help keep the organization on its path and help the organization to remember why they're doing their work. If you are beating down your teams and your organizations, then how does that align with the mission, vision, and values? And sometimes the mission, vision, and values are used to guilt employees into maintaining or attempting to maintain these unsustainable work practices. So, really a bad deal. So, then number three, one of the other reasons how we end up with burnout or get to the point of burnout is personal drivers. So, you have ambition, but you also have potentially its twin, which is fear. Ambition says, "Oh, I can do this. I'm going to be successful. I'm willing to do what it takes." And fear says that if I don't do it, how am I going to look? Is this going to impact my career? Will it ruin opportunities? Fear of failures oftentimes drives people to continue beyond their limits because you're concerned and afraid about how other people might view you. It still should not mean that you should allow any type of work practice to take over your life. It's just not a good practice. And so this is how we ultimately end up shunning the advice, and subsequently you assume an identity that you don't even recognize. You don't Sometimes you get to the point you don't even recognize yourself because you have been burned out and you have ignored the signs, whether it is how you feel, what you think, your actual physical well-being. All of these things are impacted, and you have taken on different characteristics as a result of this burnout, and you may not have even seen it as time was moving forward. And so this leads me to talk about some of the actual signs of burnout. And I asked a close friend of mine, his name is Willie Guest, he's a licensed therapist. I asked him specifically, what are some of the most common things that we should recognize when it comes to burnout? And so he gave me 5 signs to look for. So I'm going to list them for you here. Number 1 is irritable. Number 2 is impatient. Number 3 is hyper focus on solutions. Number 4, non empathetic. And number 5, argumentative. One of the things that he indicated to me, because I asked specifically, well, do these all just kind of show up at the same time? What is going on? And what he indicated to me is that typically you will see these one after another, and they're not necessarily in this particular order that I just gave to you, but you will generally see all 5 of these things present in someone who is burned out. And so you might also be thinking, well, I know people who've demonstrated these characteristics or behaviors, and I just kind of thought that that's who they were. Now, that may very well be true because some people are just cantankerous and they're not easy to get along with. But notwithstanding the fact that those people are not in positions where they're driven by their work and constantly working, from sun up to sundown, these are some of the signs that you can look for to help you to identify if you are experiencing burnout or if people on your team are experiencing burnout. How easy is it for us to get short with people when we're just so tired? We just can't we can't give more. We're constantly irritated. We're impatient and we want things to be done right now when we want them. You can go down the list of these things, and I'm sure that you can either identify these things in your own behavior or, like I said, in the behavior of other people. And so now we want to talk about how can we prevent burnout? Because going back to my earlier point about the performative burnout, you may not even realize that you're demonstrating these types of behaviors because people are not always as direct to address concerns, especially if they're repeated concerns like this. It's uncomfortable and it's awkward. And if you are in the leadership position and you're the one who's demonstrating these types of behaviors, well, chances are the people on your team may not ever say a word to you just because of the work, the power dynamic that exists inherently within that relationship. So, one of the ways that we can prevent burnout is to number one, set boundaries. This is the most important thing that you can do for yourself, both professionally and personally. It is extremely important to have boundaries. And I'll give you an example because I've had several conversations with someone, and they shared with me that they are burned out, that they are just so tired. They're working on several committees, they're running a really large department, and they only have less than a handful of people on staff to handle the level of workload that they have taken on. And so I just calmly asked, well, why don't you stop doing one of those particular things or a couple of those particular things? Well, I know that I need to, was her response. And so then I went on to say, well, I mean, you do recognize that you have control over your career, and it would be a good thing for you to just let some of those things go. You can only do what you have the skill set to do, the competency to do, and the time to do. You can't save the world. And my point to you is it is not up to you to be the hero. And again, when it goes to some of the cultures within some of these organizations, especially if you're working for an organization that has a grand mission of serving people in some capacity, it can be used against you because sometimes the leadership, they don't mind allowing you to be the workhorse to handle everything because again they don't have to do it, so it's no big deal to them. They're not incentivized to change the scenario because you continue to deliver on what it is that is needed. Sometimes you have to be uncomfortable allowing things to be incomplete or just completely all out saying no, we don't have the time to accomplish this because we don't have the appropriate level of resources. You might just need to point out that there are some risks that are involved, which leads me to my second point, which is having a conversation with your boss. When you have a conversation with your boss about burnout and how you might have gotten there, what may have contributed to it, provide some quantitative information to help them understand numbers. If bosses don't understand anything else, they understand numbers. If you go in and you tell them that this is how many people that we're dealing with, this is how many hours that we're working day in and day out, this is how many days a week that it takes us to accomplish these things, and you start to quantify it with actual numbers, then it may be a wake up call for them. So you want to come in with armed with information, quantitative information, and then be willing to offer some solutions as to how it can be remedied. And sometimes those solutions may mean that we stop doing one thing in order to give our attention completely to other things. But you want to be the one who initiates that, because if your boss is not even recognizing that you're burned out, that you've been overworking all this time and that now you're burning out, or that you're already burned out, they're not going to come to you with solutions because again, they have no incentive to do so because you're continuing to deliver. So be sure to have that conversation and be armed with information that justifies your case on why you need to do A, B, or C. And you know your work better than anyone else. Be willing and able to provide the appropriate context for that conversation. And then number three, if that doesn't seem to move the needle, well, maybe you have to reconsider if that is the appropriate department for you. Maybe there are other opportunities within that organization where your skill set would be better utilized and applied, where there's a healthier uh, subculture. So leave your options open for those things. And if all else doesn't seem to be working and there's not an opportunity in another department, well, maybe your skill set would be better fit with another organization altogether. You have to choose yourself, and you have to be the one who directs your career path. You do have options, so take advantage of them. And then the last thing that I want to point out is be open to talking to a therapist. Sometimes the best thing that we can do is to talk to someone who is objective and has absolutely nothing to do with the environment where we're working. There are many people out here who have wonderful practices, who specialize in all manner of mental distress and even things like burnout because of the impact that it has on us. This is a good thing, and you want to address it sooner rather than later. Again, because of the consequences that this can have on our lives. And so it is a wonderful thing to have the opportunity to be able to speak to someone who can help us figure out, who am I? How did I get here? What is it that I can do to alleviate this? How can I approach any type of conversation or conversations that I need to have, and help me to process my thoughts and my feelings on these particular uh, items and subjects. Those are extremely important. And again, we don't want to stay stuck in a situation where we're just running on this hamster wheel and it continues to speed up and we're doing everything we can to keep up with it. You have to provide people the incentive to act. And so you should not continue in a path of burnout, nor should you continue to just dismiss some of the good advice and counsel that some might have already given you, but you're just maybe fearful on how to take the appropriate level of action. Choose yourself. Because again, burnout means that not only are you burned out at work, you're burned out at home. You don't just check a box of burnout at work and when you leave the office for the day, that, oh, everything else turns back on. This impacts your entire life, personal and professional. So believe me, your family and your friends, they will recognize that something is different about you because you are burned out. And so if they are willing to have conversations with you, or maybe they've already shared some details with you and had conversations and say, hey, what's really going on? Address those things and thank them for being willing to be honest and transparent with you, because you need that critical feedback. You have to care for yourself. And if you have people in your life who love you, well, then that's definitely a wonderful thing because they will assist you with that. But when it comes to work, you really do have to keep yourself in mind and and recognize that you are your best advocate. Okay. So I trust that this has been a helpful conversation, and I certainly appreciate that you've given me some time to share this with you. And so be sure to send some stories that you would like to share with me to connect at crossroadsandcatalysts.com. And we are at the end of our episode. So be thoughtful, be wise, and be strategic. And remember, crossroads reveal who you are, catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters. So make it count. I'll talk to you next week.